Are you listening?
All right, next up, we are joined by a very special guest. Fantastic game out there if you haven't played it yet. Dawn of the Monsters. I'm a big fan of Rampage growing up. And on this week's show, we are joined by Alex Rushdy of 13 AM Games. Alex, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me. Happy to be here.
Yeah, let's talk about your game, Dawn of the Monsters. You play as 4 different kind of mega beasts, and you're battling these kaiju monsters. That's kind of a very surface level description, so why don't you explain?
Dawn of the Monsters is a 2-player co-op, basically side-scrolling beat-em-up where you get to play as one of 4 titanic characters and smash through cities, rip apart hordes of kaiju enemies, upgrade yourself with DNA augments, and experience like a fully voiced story that kind of tells the plot of why you're there and who you're smashing.
Yeah, the DNA augmentation was one of the cool things that I did not expect when I jumped into this game, but it really kind of changed it from just being a side-scrolling beat-em-up to something a little bigger than that.
Yeah, I mean, our general goal was, how do we take the beat-em-up genre and kind of push it forward? So part of that was making really deep, really expressive combat. You can dodge, you can block, you can parry, you have a bunch of special attacks. It's kind of more akin to a fighting game. And then the other part was how do we make a game that's worth playing for 8 hours? Most beat 'em ups are an hour tops. So, adding the DNA augment system, the ability to customize your character, and adding a fully voiced story were ways we thought to hey, how do we make this feel like a modern, proper game?
Yeah, and I'm curious on the inspiration side, because, I mentioned Rampage just because when everybody talks about kaiju, city destructions, that's where they go. But this game has, heavy anime vibes. There's obviously kaiju film vibes. What was the inspiration behind the game?
There's a lot of places for inspiration. I'm a huge kaiju nut. I've been watching Godzilla and Ultraman and Gamera since I was a kid. So for us, we actually held weekly movie nights where we would watch different kaiju movies together as a group. I'm a big fan of the 90s Gamera trilogy. That was a big influence. Pacific Rim was a big influence, all the Godzilla movies. And then honestly, gameplay wise, we were pulling more from games like Bayonetta and God of War and Dynasty Warriors than we were from Streets of Rage and Final Fight. That was kind of more the inspiration.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned Pacific Rim, because now that movie's in my head and I'm thinking about your game, there's a lot of similarities there. And this probably is the closest we'll get to a Pacific Rim style video game.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a huge fan of Pacific Rim and a huge fan of Guillermo del Toro. And, I hope we made something that Pacific Rim fans will enjoy just as much.
Now, you mentioned being a fan of kaiju. I noticed on your social media you just got back from G-Fest. I assume you were showing off the game. What was the response from the diehard kaiju fans there?
It was great. When I was able to show the game to a room full of kaiju fans, and pretty much anytime I mentioned Dawn of the Monsters, there was just applause and cheering. And a lot of people who came up to our booth either to buy merch or to get me to sign something. I mean, they're really happy with the game. A lot of people came up to me personally to thank me for making a new kaiju video game that's good. So I appreciated that.
Yeah, it's kind of funny because it's one of those genres in the video game industry that's always kind of been lacking. We had Classic Game Fest here in Austin this last weekend, and one of the big tent poles was the creator of Rampage. And I was talking to him, I was like, man, when are we going to get a new Rampage game? And he's just like, it's out of my hands. And it just blows my mind because that was such a pivotal game in classic video game history that you'd think the Call of Duties or something like that, kaijus would continue on. But it's nice to see that you guys are kind of carrying the torch on that end.
Yeah, that's our goal. I've talked to Brian F. Colin before, and yeah, I mean, even he had ideas for Rampage games that never got made, but now it's owned by Warner Brothers and they don't want to do anything with it, I don't think.
Yeah, that's the unfortunate future for us kaiju fans out there. But going back to Dawn of the Monsters, how long was development for this game?
So the development was just about 3 years when all was done. We started it really, I mean, we had an early idea of it back in 2016, came up with a prototype, shelved it, and then revisited it in late 2018, early 2019. And started to turn what was once a fighting game into a beat 'em up, co-op beat 'em up. And then we worked on that through the pandemic. and released it earlier this March.
Through that development process, that shelving point, was that just like, oh man, we've got too much going on in our lives, or were you working on a different game concept at that point?
Well, we tried to get it made as a fighting game. That was the initial concept. But a lot of, game publishers that we were trying to pitch it to, because we needed a bigger budget to make it a fighting game, they just weren't interested in fighting games. They were like, basically, Street Fighter V didn't do as well as they hoped, and they went, well, if they're not doing well, then no fighting game will do well, which wasn't true, but the publishers got to do what they got to do. Very averse to risk. So we said, you know what, we'll just put this away for now. We worked on a game called Double Cross, and we released that in, I think it was very early 2019. So once Double Cross was done, we looked at that old concept and we went, you know what, we want to revisit this, but we think it would be more fun as a co-op beat 'em up that you could play cooperatively with a friend. We think that would be more exciting than just a fighting game, and we kind of took that direction and ran with it.
One of the things that I took away from it was like the super cool anime art style. It almost looks hand-drawn. Is it hand-drawn, or is there like a filter within Unity or Unreal that you can kind of create that look?
It's a mix of a few things. All the environments are done in 3D with a bunch of special shader work to make them look kind of like comic book art. And then all the characters are 2D, but we've applied normal maps and special shaders to the characters so that they can be lit like a 3D character. So it implies a lot of wizardry to make them look the way they do. But it's not quite hand-drawn.
Okay.
It's kind of a mix of a bunch of effects, yeah.
I ask every developer that comes on this show, because you're looking at 3 years of your life, and then the game finally launches. What is launch day like for you? Are you hiding under the sheets? Are you in the forums? Are you talking with people online? Are you just praying to God that nobody finds a broken bug? Walk me through launch day for you.
Before launch day is review day. Whenever the review embargo comes up, that's always stressful. Thankfully, people, reviewers love the game. So that was always good. So because of that, launch day was not as stressful, but it's still chaos. I personally manage a lot of the social media stuff. So when the game launches, I'm just like on Twitter and Facebook and everything, scouring through to make sure that, is there anyone who has any questions? Is there anyone who has has identified any bugs? Anyone on our Discord saying anything? And then of course, liking and retweeting and commenting on anything about the game that I can find. So it's pretty chaotic, pretty exhausting, but also very exciting because, a game isn't complete until someone is out there playing it.
Recently I read something from an indie developer where they were talking about like publishers and that kind of very interesting balance between a publisher and the indie dev where they're trying to create games. With the game of Dawn of the Monsters, your publisher was Wayforward. What was their reaction to the game? Were they excited? How did they respond to the entire project?
Yeah, basically we had been working with Wayforward on just some kind of, they needed some support work on a different title. And we were working with them and we finished that work. And they were kind of like, okay, well, let's work on the next, let's find another title for you guys to work on. And I said, okay, we can do that, but let me show you what we're working on. And I showed them Dawn and they were just like, no, let's work on this. This looks awesome. So they were pretty excited and pretty enthusiastic right from the get-go.
Following launch, has the game met your expectations of kind of the reaction from the public, unit sales and everything like that?
In terms of critical response, it's been great. In terms of sales, we kind of launched not too long after Elden Ring, which sucked a lot of the air out of the room. So they could have been better. But things are picking up, especially, we did a sale a couple of weeks ago. And we've got some other stuff planned to kind of keep the game going. So it's sold all right. It's not been terrible, but certainly Elden Ring just sucked all the air out of the room for anything that launched in March.
You mentioned all these plans and sales. Something I found that was really interesting that you guys are doing is the actual partaking in the Google Stadia Demos. How's that been? Has that brought new players to you guys?
So this was our first game that we ever released on Stadia. And I wasn't really that familiar with Stadia before releasing this game. And we basically put it on Stadia because Google, asked us to. They're like, hey, we want this game on Stadia. And honestly, it's been really cool because the Stadia community is really passionate about Stadia. and they're a lot bigger than I thought they would be. And getting it working on Stadia was not terribly difficult. So it's been pretty cool for us to just engage with a community that we haven't really seen before, that we didn't really know was out there. And it's like a whole different group of people that are excited about the game that I think a lot of other developers kind of forget about or don't reach out to. But I mean, they were great. They were awesome.
Now, the demo part of it, is that something that they give you the option to flip on and off like a switch? Or do you have to say, we'll do it for X amount of days or anything on that end?
I'm not sure exactly how that works, because I think Wayforward handles the kind of those publishing elements. We were just on the development side. But that was like a couple of months ago, I think we announced that. And I'm not sure exactly how it works per se.
Yeah, back in the day, Stadia, when they still had Stadia Games and Entertainment, Jade used to talk about this idea of a cloud-based arcade where you could literally just have demos of games. And that always intrigued me. And to see they're kind of going towards that with these demos, it's kind of cool. We're like, yeah, you don't need a quarter. You can just try this game out. If you like it, buy it. And it's kind of a neat little system on that end. I'm a big fan of King Kong. I love kaiju. I have to assume, I don't even think this is an if, have you thought about the potential of like a Dawn of the Monsters movie?
I'd love to do a Dawn of the Monsters movie. I absolutely down. In fact, for April Fools, we made a mock poster that fooled a few people, but was ultimately just a joke. One of the things that's unique about Dawn of the Monsters to other monster games is it has an in-depth story and an in-depth world that's built into it that people really liked. And we expand on that a bit with a free comic book that we gave out at G-Fest, and it's on our website. And I just feel like there is so much potential to expand into other media that I would just be happy to do it.
Yeah, I guess the big question is do you go animated or do you go live action? Do you have a preference there?
I'd want to go live action, but I'd want it to be like guys in rubber suits, miniature cities, like the real deal tokusatsu style. That would be my preference for sure.
Yeah, nobody makes that anymore, but that's just it was so dope back in the day.
Yeah, I want it to feel like a wrestling match,
Yeah. Yeah, like the old school Power Ranger fights. They were fantastic. I guess going on to that whole scheme, Aegis Prime, you've got kind of the pilot of that. Do you have any casting ideas? Maybe like a Charlie Hunnam or anybody you would like to see in the role?
Well, he was initially based off of a Japanese actor called Hiroshi Abe, who was in, if you've seen it, he was in Godzilla 2000. So he'd probably be my first choice. I don't know if he even does English roles, but if he does, I'd be like, he's the guy.
Earlier on in the interview, you kind of touched upon the future of the game and kind of some plans. Can I dig into that a little bit? Are we talking DLCs or what are you thinking there?
Yeah, I can't say much, but I will say that we do have plans for more content for the game in the coming months. And hopefully we'll be not just announcing it on our social media, but we want to get the community involved, so people on our Discord, on our Twitter, everything, to kind of, take their feedback and put that back into the game and make new content for it.
Right before I jumped on here, I had some members of our community ask some questions that they wanted to know from you personally. So you mind if we just spitfire, do a rapid fire shoot?
Yeah.
All right, so first question comes from SSS over on Discord, and they basically said, what is your favorite game of all time?
Ooh, that's tough. I would have to say my favorite game of all time is probably, right now, I'd say it's G Darius, which is an old shooter on the PS1. I'm just obsessed with that game. I've been playing it nonstop.
Indie Mion over on Discord asked the question of any plans for online multiplayer coming to Dawn of Monsters?
None right now. It takes a lot of time and money to make that stuff, to kind of retrofit it. But if we ever get to do a sequel, I think it's one of the first things we'd want to include right out the gate.
Sean Christopher on Discord asked, did you guys get to use Stadia's low change porting tool?
I don't think so. I'm not familiar with what that is.
This one might be a little personal, so I don't know if you want to jump into it, but RJ over on Twitter asked, how is your Stadia Pro revenue? Which I think is a very personal question, RJ, and I don't know if you want to dive into that. Has the game been successful on Stadia Pro for you?
I honestly don't, I just have the downloads. Our publisher handles most of the revenue stuff, so I don't know how it necessarily translates into this is how much money you make. But the downloads were way higher than I thought on Stadia. It surprised me, and I thought that was really cool.
More than 2,000, more than 5,000, Price is Right rules maybe go up, or?
It was more than 10,000.
Wow, that's awesome.
Right out the gate. So I was like, wow, that's a lot of Stadia users downloading and enjoying the game.
Final question is Ryzak over on Twitter. Very kind of a cool question. If you could go back and change something during development, what would you do different?
I think if I could go back and change something in development, there's a bunch of stuff we had to cut, a bunch of stuff we couldn't, complete in time. I think I would probably, it would be all minor stuff, like tightening up a few of the earlier levels so that they're a little quicker. And then one feature that we didn't get to implement, or we got close and had to cut, was character-specific augments. So imagine an augment that is this augment specifically powers up Ganira's crab, and only Ganira can use it, and it makes her crab twice as fast or something. We had this idea of character-specific augments, but we had to cut it at the last minute. And I really wish we could bring it back, because it really allows you to kind of create, focused new experiences for each character and encourages you to play different characters in different ways. So I definitely want to figure out a way to bring that in.
Well, again, I appreciate you coming on the show. If someone wants to find out more information about yourself, about 13 AM or Dawn of the Monsters, where should they go?
Well, our website, 13amgames.com, is always your best bet. We do tweet a lot, so at 13amgames on Twitter. And we do have a Discord. There's links on the website and on our Twitter. If you want to ask us something directly, it's a great way to do it.
Well, thank you again for coming on the show, and to everybody watching at home, thank you so much for watching this week's episode of the Nerf Report. Until next time, my name is Bryant. This has been the Nerf Report, and we will see you in the next video. Thanks for watching, guys. Hey, thanks again for checking out our channel. If you like what you saw and you want to see more content just like it, which who wouldn't, hit the subscribe button right there. And while you're down there, hit the like button. Maybe even consider becoming a Nerf Report best friend, just like the people listed down below did. In fact, don't you want to see your name there? I know I do.